So we're approaching the halfway mark through the 2025 NBA season, and I wanted to give a letter grade for every NBA team's 2025 so far, because we're starting to figure out more and more what these teams' identities are as we're approaching the trade deadline. These teams have played around or over 40 games this year, so it's a decent sample size to see what the team's identity are. Are they going to go all in with what they have right now? Are they going to buy at the deadline? Are they going to sell at the deadline? And if teams that want to make the playoffs and make a run this year are getting a low grade on my rankings, they're probably going to want to make a move at the deadline. They want to buy. They want to switch things up. And like always, let me know what you guys agree with or disagree with in this video, especially for your favorite team. Do you agree with what I say? Do you disagree? Please let me know down below. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are not already. Let's get into it. So we're going to start off with the Philadelphia 76ers, a fun place to start. I'm going to give it a D+. Yeah, it's going to be one of the lower grades in this video so far because the 76ers are a non-play-in tournament team. They are a decent amount of games under 500 this year, and they're just really struggling to figure out what they are. They made a massive move in the offseason, giving Paul George a max contract as a 34-year-old, and Paul George has not lived up to that contract this year. I was scared of years 3 and 4 of this deal when Paul George was going to be 36 or 37. I thought he was going to be a lot better this year. Now, he has suffered 2 injuries this year, but that's just been the moral of the story for the 2025 Sixers. Injuries. Joel Embiid has missed a ton of time this year. Maxey missed some time. Their standout rookie, Jared McCain, looks like they hit a home run there, is out for the year. They didn't really hit on the minimum contracts around these guys, like Kyle Lowry's not working out, Reggie Jackson, Caleb Martin's been up and down. Same with Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, and Kelly Oubre. The one bright spot is Gershon Yabusele, who's looking like a great pickup. I just wonder if they're going to look to trade him at the deadline just to recoup some assets going forward, because what this team is right now, with how little Joel Embiid has played this year and how unhealthy this team has been overall, I don't see how they make a run in the Eastern Conference. Next up, I'm going to give the Washington Wizards a C-. You'd be like, Matt, how are you giving the Wizards a better grade than the Philadelphia 76ers when the Wizards are 25 games under 500? Well, this was pretty much expected for the Washington Wizards to be the worst team in the NBA this year. They are dead last in offensive rating, dead last in defensive rating, and dead last in net rating. And I'm fine with that with the Wizards this year. They should be bottoming out. They should not be doing what some other teams have done in the past, where they don't go fully into the rebuild and they end up picking around number 8 to 12 or 13, 14 in the draft, and you can't get that franchise-changing talent. The Wizards are trying to capture the flag this year. I hope that they end up trading their veterans at the deadline, like Valanciunas, Kuzma, Malcolm Brogdon, and they still give more reps to their young guys like Keyshawn George, Sarr, Koulibaly, and Carrington. Now, a lot of these young guys have had up and down either rookie years or sophomore years, so I would like to see this team be a little bit more encouraging. Alex Sarr has been playing better as of late, but I think this team had these expectations going into the year. Maybe they're a lot worse than they originally thought, because it seems like whenever a team has their best offensive performance of the season, you look at who they're playing, and it's usually the Washington Wizards. Next up, we have the Atlanta Hawks, who are a respectable team in the Eastern Conference. They're currently the 8th seed right now. They're above 500. I'm going to give their 2025 so far a B. They've been around average offensively. They are a bottom team defensively right now, so maybe they're overachieving just a little bit. They do benefit of playing in a weaker Eastern Conference, but this Hawks team is a lot more enjoyable in 2025 than it was in 2024, and they've had their fair share of injuries once again, where Jalen Johnson and DeAndre Hunter have missed some time. Dyson Daniels, though, that trade that they made involving him and DeJounte Murray, and they got 2 first-round picks in that deal in the offseason, is looking like a home run of a trade in hindsight. Risa Shea has shown some flashes this year. They're even getting a little bit out of Vic Krejci or Garrison Matthews. I know Kobe Buffkin has been slightly disappointing, but the Atlanta Hawks are playing good basketball this year. They were in the semifinals of the NBA Cup. They also don't own their first-round pick from the DeJounte Murray trade back in 2022 for the 2025 draft. So they want to be good. They want to make the playoffs, and it's looking like right now they are a playoff team, and Trae Young is finally going to get that assist crown. Next up, we're going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm going to give them an A-. There was a lot of talk going into this year. Could the Memphis Grizzlies need a little bit of a gap year? Could they need another retool year now that you have everybody fully healthy again? You have a lot of new names on the team, and could it take a little bit of time to gel together? No, they are insane this year. They are a really good team on both ends of the floor. They are currently 4th in the NBA net rating because they are a top 5 offensive team and a top 5 defensive team. And this is with Ja Morant and Desmond Bane missing a ton of time this year. Jaren Jackson Jr. not only is playing like an all-star talent, but an all-NBA talent. They're getting amazing play out of their 2nd round pick, Jalen Wells, who may win Rookie of the Year. Zach Edey has been a productive rookie as well. Guys like Jake LaRavia, Scottie Pippen Jr., Jay Huff, and Santi Aldama have been stepping up as role players on this team as well. I think Taylor Jenkins is the most underrated head coach in the NBA, and this team is a top 5 team in in net rating, like I said, and they are currently the 3 seed in a loaded Western Conference, and they look like a legitimate contender for the Western Conference Finals this year. I'm giving it an A-, and I do wonder if they're going to make a big splash at the deadline to go all in this year. Next up, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm going to give them a C. They are currently around 500 right now, and they've been one of the more healthier teams in terms of your star players playing. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Dante DiVincenzo, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker have played every single game for them at the moment I'm recording this, and they are still barely over 500 right now. They are currently around the 8th spot in the Western Conference, and they're pretty much only 2 games out of being the 12th seed in the West as well. We all know they made that massive risk trading away Karl-Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo in the offseason, and it really hasn't been working out all that well with Julius Randle as the number 2, them extending Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, Mike Conley, Jaden McDaniels have all been inconsistent on the offensive end of the floor. Anthony Edwards has cooled off a little bit since his elite 3-point shooting start to the year, and this team is still one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They've just struggled offensively, and I'm keeping my eyes on them on making a big trade at the deadline to get a number 2 to Anthony Edwards to try to regain that hype they had going into this year, where we all thought they could be a finals contender, and it's not looking like that right now. Next up, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this is an easy A+. Their expectations going into the year, they were going to be a tier 2, tier 3 Eastern Conference team, finish around the 5 to the 7 seeds in the Eastern Conference. Well, they currently have the best record in the NBA. I'm recording this, they are 34-5. This is before their matchup against the OKC Thunder. We'll see if they end up beating them again, but they have just been so much fun to watch. They may get 4 All-Stars, they can get 4 guys on an All-NBA team this year, and this is all with Donovan Mitchell having somewhat of a down year offensively to his standards, because he's letting Evan Mobley have a breakout year. Darius Garland is looking like a modern-day Steve Nash in 2025. Kenny Atkinson is looking like a home run hire from last year's offseason, and their wings are showing out. Off the bench, Max Strus, who's missed some time, is still productive. Dean Wade, Karis LeVert, George Niang. And how can I not talk about Ty Jerome, who's been one of the best backup point guards in the NBA, maybe the best backup point guard in the NBA. It's either him or Peyton Pritchard. They're currently 2nd in the NBA in terms of net rating, the best offensive team in the NBA for a team that has had such a big defensive identity, and they're still top 10 in defense. They're a finals contender right now, and they're looking like the odds-on favorite to make it out of the Eastern Conference. We got the Detroit Pistons. Honestly, with everything considered and what they've been over the last 5 years, I'm giving this season an A- so far for Detroit. They are fun to watch again. They're pretty much a league average team in terms of offensive rating, defensive rating. They're 18th in the NBA in net rating this year, and Cade Cunningham is not just looking like a star, but a superstar. I do think Cade Cunningham, if the season ended today, would be on All-NBA second team, meaning he's a top 10 player in the league this year with all the players that can qualify for making the All-NBA teams. Cade is averaging 25 points, 9.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field, 38% from 3, and 80% from the line. They are looking great with new head coach JB Bickerstaff compared to what last year was with Monty Williams. I know it's a shame Jaden Ivey is going to miss a lot of time this year, but they're seeing progression out of Ron Holland as a rookie. Asar Thompson, with everything considered with him going into the year with his health scare last year. Isaiah Stewart is looking great. Malik Beasley is one of the best value pickups of the 2024 offseason. And like I said, the Pistons are just fun to watch again. They went into Madison Square Garden and they beat the Knicks on the road in an electric game where Cade Cunningham went off. I hope to see Detroit Pistons playoff basketball this year because they deserve it. We're going to stay in the Eastern Conference and we're going to talk about the 2025 Indiana Pacers. I'm going to be giving them a B- just because they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They had very high expectations going into this year. They pretty much brought everybody back. Now, they definitely caught the injury bug this year. Tyrese Haliburton did not have the greatest first half in the world, but since the calendar year hit 2025, they have been one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. They are a top 10 offense in the NBA. They are still a bottom 10 defense, but they're a few games above 500 right now. They're a non-play-in tournament playoff team in the Eastern Conference. And with Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman going down and Miles Turner having somewhat of a down year offensively to what he's been in the past, I still think this is one of the deeper teams in the Eastern Conference. They can withstand injuries, which we've seen from them this year, and they're still above 500. They can make a trade or two if they want to. Andrew Nembhard has been great since he came back from his injury. I just think they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and they're struggling to be a top 4 seed right now. That's why I have them at a B-, but we'll see how they look in the second half of the year. I'm giving the 2025 Houston Rockets an A so far. This team was at the bottom of the Western Conference for a lot of time over the last few years. Last year, though, they were great. They ended up going 41-41 in their first year with Ime Udoka. And this year, in a loaded Western Conference, they're the 2 seed. They are 15 games above 500 at the moment I'm recording this. They are a top 5 defensive team in the NBA. They are so much fun to watch on that end of the floor with the Terra twins, Tari Eason, and Amen Thompson. And you're also getting great defensive play out of Alperen Şengün over these last few weeks. He's taken a stride defensively. They are still around a top 10 offensive team as well. Jalen Green has looked great since the calendar year hit 2025, where he's averaging an efficient 30 points a night. We'll see if this is the real deal or if it's just a March of 2024 again. And they have all the assets in the world to make a trade as well, with Fred VanVleet not playing up to his caliber this year. And Dylan Brooks has looked good defensively, but he's still making a ton of money where they can implement that in a trade if they'd like to. So they can keep this roster how it is. It is progressing. The young core has looked great, and they're at the top of a loaded Western Conference. Like I said, they don't need to make a move right now. And it's just nice to see the young guys taking a step with this team. They built through the draft. It's paying off. I think their season is an A. We're going to go to the Sacramento Kings here, and I'm going to give their 2025 a C+. They've had a lot go on here in 2025. They traded for DeMar DeRozan in the offseason. They just got their first round pick, Devin Carter, back. They fired their head coach, Mike Brown, the only coach to be fired so far this year, and they're at 500 right now. They're a play-in tournament spot in the Western Conference, but they do have the 11th best net rating in the NBA. I do think they've been a little bit unlucky at times this year. Domantas Sabonis still doing what he's doing. Same with De'Aaron Fox. I have no idea why Mike Brown refused to play Keon Ellis, because he's a winning caliber basketball player on both ends of the floor. Keegan Murray and Malik Monk's efficiency has taken a hit this year, but I think with all things considered, you're happy where you are right now, because this could be a lot worse for Sacramento. Just firing your head coach, Rich Paul, De'Aaron Fox's agent, meeting with the team, discussing on what their future is, because Fox is a free agent at the end of the 2026 season. So I think this could go up in the second half of the year. I wonder if they are going to make a move at the deadline. I'm going to give it a C+ right now, and I think that's pretty fair. My second A+ in this video is going to go to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They lost Chet Holmgren earlier in the year, and they've been the best team in the Western Conference and arguably in the NBA since he went down. They are the #1 team in the NBA in terms of net rating. They are the #1 defensive team without Chet Holmgren. Imagine how much better their defense is going to be when Chet Holmgren comes back. They are 6th offensively this year, and they've had a lot of injuries. They have. A lot of their centers have went down at multiple points this year with Chet. Isaiah Hartenstein was injured to start off the year, got injured again. Jalen Williams has missed some time the year. The other center, not the #2 scoring option, Alex Caruso, has missed some time this year, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing like an MVP. They're getting guys like Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, AJ Mitchell before he went down to step up offensively. They have all the assets in the world if they want to make a trade as well at the deadline, because they can get to some matching salary with Kenrich Williams or Isaiah Joe or Ousmane Dieng if they wanted to go after one of the bigger role players like Cam Johnson on the market. But the 2025 Thunder have been the finals favorite for most of the year, them and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's why they're up there with the Cavs in the A+ tier. I'm throwing the 2025 Portland Trailblazers in the D+ tier. I have not enjoyed watching Portland this year. I've enjoyed watching some players on their team, Shaedon Sharpe at times. I've definitely enjoyed watching Donovan Clingan and Toumani Camara defensively, but this team is just not fun to watch most nights because Scoot Henderson has been very up and down in year #2. I'm not the biggest fan of Chauncey Billups. They are a bottom 5 offensive and defensive team in the NBA. Jeremy Grant has been inefficient. DeAndre Ayton has had some horrible body language over his last few games. I'm glad it's looking like they're going to finally start Donovan Clingan throughout the second half of the year. Denny Avdija struggled to start off the year, but has been much better as of late. And Anthony Simons has been inefficient at times with his efficiency as well this year. I still feel like they're trying to figure out their identity. Obviously, Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton don't really have a spot on this team right now with the way they're going. I feel like it's inevitable they're going to move on from Chauncey Billups at the end of the year. Maybe they just get lucky in the lottery and they're able to add Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper, and this team looks a little bit better next year. But Scoot Henderson not taking that year 2 leap after a disappointing rookie year has definitely hurt their watchability this year. And I think with everything considered so far, it's a D+. I want to put them a little bit higher because they've actually been respectable over their last few games, but just all the drama with Jimmy Butler, I'm giving the 2025 Heat a C. Since the Miami Heat have suspended Jimmy Butler, Nikola Jovic has been much better offensively, and same with Jaime Jaquez. Bam Adebayo has been one of the more disappointing players in the NBA this year, but on the opposite end of that, Tyler Hero has been one of the more surprising players in the NBA, playing like an all-star, an all-NBA talent this year, and has been their #1 offensive option. They're getting good play out of Hayward Highsmith, Khalil Ware, their rookie, Pele Larson, their rookie, and Alec Burks as well, but there's been a lot of disappointing players on the Heat this year. Jimmy Butler obviously at the forefront of that. Bam Adebayo, like I mentioned, Terry Rozier, Duncan Robinson, those guys have been disappointing as well. I don't love watching the Heat right now just because of the Jimmy Butler cloud looming over them every single night. There have been some very exciting young players on this team this year, but I think the whole Jimmy Butler situation really docks them this year, and I'm excited to see where he ends up after the deadline, because what if Pat Riley just refuses to trade him? I'm giving the 2025 Clippers a B+. Man, everybody was scared about the Clippers going into this year, where Kawhi Leonard was just going to be out indefinitely to start off the year, and they don't own their first round pick this year. That goes to the OKC Thunder. We're like, oh my god, the Clippers are going to be bad. they're going to win the lottery, but that pick's going to go to OKC. Well, no, the Clippers have been a top 5 team in the Western Conference this year. They've been a top 5 defense in the NBA without Kawhi Leonard because of guys they picked up in the offseason, like Derrick Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn, who have been good on that end of the floor. James Harden has been carrying this team offensively at times with the Ivica Zubac and Norman Powell, who's breaking out as a number 2 option offensively. And they just got Kawhi Leonard back. And if he can stay healthy throughout the second half of the year, they do have PJ Tucker's $11 million contract they can move at the deadline. The Clippers could definitely be a playoff team. And not a lot of people expected them to be a playoff team going into this year. So I think that's warrant of a B+ grade. And them letting Paul George walk to Philadelphia is looking like a blessing in disguise. We'll go to the Big Apple now and we'll talk about the New York Knicks, who made that big trade with Minnesota in the offseason. I'm going to give the 2025 Knicks a B+. They've pretty much been the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference for a little bit now because Orlando's had their fair share of injuries and Milwaukee's been a little bit disappointing. They are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. They've been top 3 in offensive rating for the last few months. They have struggled defensively though, losing Isaiah Hartenstein in the offseason and Karl-Anthony Towns not being the best rim protector in the world. They are a top 5 team in terms of net rating though. I'm just a little bit scared about the 2025 Knicks. They don't have a ton of depth, and Tom Thibodeau is playing their starters a ton of minutes. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart up there in the top 10 of minutes in the NBA. Mitchell Robinson has yet to play yet this year. Miles McBride has had some injuries. Karl-Anthony Towns has been banged up at times. And the Knicks have had some bad losses this year. They've lost to Utah. They lost to Orlando without Franz and Suggs and Paolo Banchero when they were double-digit favorites in that game. They've lost to Chicago multiple times. The Knicks have not been able to take care of the teams that they should beat on paper. And usually, when you're a team that can't do that, you can't be taken seriously as a finals contender. The Cleveland Cavaliers this year have been able to beat the bad teams in front of them, and that's what finals contenders do. And the 2025 Knicks have not yet to do that. They've had some very good wins this year, but like I said, they've had some bad losses, and I do think they could benefit of making a move at the deadline. I still think it's been a good year for the Knicks. It's just a little bit different from last year's vibe, where they didn't have high expectations and they shattered those. This year, they have high expectations and they haven't quite reached those yet. And I just briefly mentioned the Orlando Magic. I'm throwing them in the A- grade this year. Paolo Banchero got hurt basically in the second week of the NBA season. He just recently came back. Franz Wagner went down. They've lost Mo Wagner for the year. Jalen Suggs went down as well. This team has been one of the more injury hit teams in the league this year with Philadelphia and New Orleans, and they are still a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. They are still a top 5 defensive team in the NBA. They've had the worst offense out of any Eastern Conference playoff contender this year just because they've lost Franz Wagner, who was playing like an all-star before he went down. Paolo Banchero, like I said, just recently came back. He was playing like an MVP candidate before he got hurt earlier in the year. They're still trying to figure out Anthony Black and Tristan DeSilva's role on their team, but those young guys have stepped up this year. KCP, you could say, has been disappointing of that big contract they gave him in the offseason. And Wendell Carter Jr., I think, has been disappointing this year. There's been a lot of disappointing players on the Magic, and they've been hit with a lot of injuries, and they're still above 500. They're still a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference, and now we're getting Franz Wagner back soon, hopefully. Paolo just came back. This team could definitely make a run to be the 3 seed or maybe even the 2 seed if everything works out in the second half. So I'm going to give the 2025 Brooklyn Nets a C-, the same grade on what I gave the Washington Wizards before. I think the Nets regret on how they started off the year because they were winning too many games. Then the Schroeder was playing too well. Same with Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson. And the first 2 guys I mentioned there, DFS and Schroeder, have been traded because Sean Marks, the GM, realized we're winning way too many games. We're trying to capture the flag. We're trying to get the number 1 overall pick. We are too good right now. They just had the most embarrassing loss of the season the other night against the LA Clippers. And I had my friends texting me like, who the hell are any of these players starting or playing for the Brooklyn Nets? I haven't heard of any of these guys. And it's going to continue to get like that throughout the course of this year. I just think the 2025 Nets really aren't going to show us too much. They didn't get a first for Dennis Schroeder or Dorian Finney-Smith, which I was shocked about. Nick Claxton has regressed a ton this year. And I don't think any of their young guys, while they have shown flashes, have taken a step this year. Yes, Cam Thomas has been a good scorer, but Noah Clowney's been a little inconsistent. Tariq Whitehead hasn't shown anything. Ben Simmons has obviously missed some time this year. And yeah, this team is going to be even more unwatchable if they trade away Cam Thomas. And we know that they are going to trade Cam Johnson. So yeah, they didn't even tank properly to start off the year. They didn't get great draft capital in return for Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm going to throw them in the C- because I just also don't think any of their young guys have taken a step this year. Similar to Minnesota and Miami, this team had high playoff hopes going into the year and maybe to make a run with their aging co-star, and they have one of the best players in the NBA. Similar to the color shirt I'm wearing, the Milwaukee Bucks here in 2025. I'm going to give them a C. They got off to an abysmal start. Everyone's like, why is Doc Rivers their head coach? Could Giannis get traded this year? and then they rattled off some wins. They ended up winning the NBA Cup. They kind of came back down to earth after that, but they've still been a top 10 team in terms of net rating this year. They're a good defensive team. They're a solid offensive team, and they've had some good wins this year, like beating the OKC Thunder in the NBA Cup final, which unfortunately does not count for their record. They've had some bad losses this year as well, and I think with their expectations going into this year, the Bucks, I think, are pretty much a C team. I believe, though, they are going to make a big trade at the deadline, similar to when they came out of nowhere and they traded for Damian Lillard. I think guys like Brook Lopez or Chris Middleton could be dealt in a couple of weeks. This is my lowest grade yet. I'm giving the 2025 Suns a D. This team got swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 1 of the playoffs last year. They couldn't do too much in the offseason because of how much money they're paying Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and oh yeah, Bradley Beal, who they're trying to trade right now, but he has a no trade clause. This team wants to go from Bradley Beal to Jimmy Butler, but that is going to be borderline impossible because they don't have much draft capital for a team to take on the Bradley Beal contract. That's how bad it is. Yusuf Nurkic has been borderline unplayable for the Suns this year. They recently just traded for Nick Richards. I don't mind that deal, but this team is under 500 in a very good Western Conference, and you could probably rattle off 6, 7, 8 teams that would beat the Suns in round number 1. Relative to his expectations going into the year, Devin Booker has been somewhat disappointing. Kevin Durant is still one of the best offensive players in the league, but he is 36 years old. Can you trust him to be healthy in the playoffs? We all know that the Bradley Beal trade a couple years ago was an absolute disaster, and it still is currently. Grayson Allen has regressed with his shooting. This team really can't make a lot of moves at the deadline, and they don't own any of their first round picks directly for pretty much the next 6 years. Yeah, I think they are having the worst year in the NBA relative to their expectations and where they want to be. But you know what, Phoenix? I'll give another team a D grade, and that is going to be the 2025 New Orleans Pelicans. This team had expectations of making the playoffs this year, and they are the worst team in the Western Conference. They have the 3rd worst record in the NBA, and they have tied with the Washington Wizards for the most losses at the moment I'm recording this. Now, I know a lot of this is because of their injuries, because everybody has been hurt on New Orleans this year. Literally everybody that was expected a significant role going into this year, outside of Yves Missi, their rookie, who is now playing 27 minutes a night because nobody else is healthy on this team, is the only player to play every single game for the Pelicans so far. And I love what I've seen from Trey Murphy this year. I think they may regret the DeJounte Murray trade a little bit as of now, but this is more so on this team being so bad. They are maybe losing value on Brandon Ingram by the day. They didn't trade him in the offseason. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He got hurt this year, so I do wonder if a team is going to even give up valuable assets for him at the deadline, and then you got to extend him on a max deal. And then it's just the whole Zion Williamson situation, man, that he got hurt again this year. He got suspended by the team for a game for missing a flight right after he came back from that injury as well. And the vibes in New Orleans have been the lowest they've been in quite some time. I do wonder if this is going to be Willie Green's last year as the head coach, maybe David Griffin as the president, because I just feel like we need to hit the reset button on just the vibes and culture in New Orleans. All right, let's go to the 2025 Denver Nuggets. I'm going to throw them a B grade this year. They are a top 4 team in a good Western Conference. I'm always going to give you the benefit of the doubt in the West compared to the East, just because it's a lot more talented and competitive. The Nuggets are the 7th ranked team in terms of net rating. Their defense has struggled this year, but they've been great offensively because they have a player who's having one of the best offensive seasons of all time in Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon have also missed some time this year as well. But man, what a home run value signing they got in Russell Westbrook in the offseason, who's had multiple triple doubles for the Nuggets this year. And he's somebody that's bringing 110% effort every single night at 36 years old. Christian Brown is taking a step this year. And after struggling early in the year, Jamal Murray, now when he is healthy, has been very good for the Denver Nuggets. I still think this team needs to make a trade at the deadline. Obviously, they had finals goals going into the year because you have arguably the best player in the NBA in Nikola Jokic, who could get his 4th MVP this year. I'd say the way the team started off this year, it was probably around a C-, maybe D+, but they've definitely played a lot better as of late. And honestly, they could definitely be higher than a B grade. Nuggets fans, let me know. Joining the Knicks and the Clippers for the 3rd team, I'm going to give a B+ grade to this year, the 2025 San Antonio Spurs. Now, there are 2 players that are helping this grade out a ton. The oldest player on this team and somebody that is entering year number 2. So Victor Wembanyama, going from basically a star last year to now a superstar this year. Someone that could end up on all NBA first team, who's shooting 47% from the field, 35% from 3, 87% from the line. He's averaging 4 blocks per game, leading the NBA, averaging 25 points and 10 rebounds. He's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year, and he's just 21 years old. Chris Paul has been one of the best veteran signings from last year's offseason. I think we were all excited about that pickup, and it's paying off this year. They're around 500 right now. I don't think that they are going to make the Western Conference playoffs, and I do think this grade could have been higher if we saw maybe a leap from Devin Vassell this year, maybe a little bit better play of Stephon Castle, maybe if Jeremy Sohan was a little bit healthier this year. Because outside of Wemby, I don't know if anybody else has taken a big step on this team, maybe outside of Julian Champagnie. And while I do think Jeremy Sohan has looked better this year compared to last year 100%, it's just unfortunate he has been banged up. I don't know if this is going to be harsh, but I'm giving Chicago my third D+ in this video, joining Portland and Philadelphia. Yeah, Chicago getting a D+ here in 2025. They just shouldn't be this good. I need Chicago to bottom out, and I'm sure they want to trade away Zach LaVine, who's been good this year. I'm sure they want to trade Nikola Vucevic, who's also been good this year, but these guys are helping them win games. They're also stealing a ton of shots from guys they need to develop and get the ball to a lot more. Patrick Williams, who they gave $90 million to in the offseason. I don't know who they were bidding against for that contract, has taken a step back. Ira Dosunmu and Kobe White have been up and down this year, but I still think are good players overall and still on fantastic contracts. I just want to see Montes Buzela shoot the ball a lot more. They traded away Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, who's been fine this year offensively, but not great defensively, and he may not even be on this team at the end of the year. And currently, the Chicago Bulls are the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference, and if it stays that way, there's a good chance they are going to get the 11th overall pick in the draft, and their first round pick is top 10 protected to San Antonio. So if Chicago somehow ends up not making the playoffs and does not get a top 10 pick, this is the worst year imaginable, and it would go to an F at the end of the year if they're not able to get a 2025 draft pick. So I don't know if this is going to be a controversial pick, but we're going to go up north, and I'm going to give the Toronto Raptors a C+ this year, the same grade I gave the Sacramento Kings. Now, I thought about putting them in that C- grade with Brooklyn and Washington, and they have been one of the worst teams in the NBA this year, but I think unlike Brooklyn and Washington, like Toronto also owns their first round pick, they've had a lot of their young guys progress this year. Grady Dick has shown a ton of flashes in year number 2. RJ Barrett has taken a step this year and has had a lot of workload on him as a number 1 option, with Scotty Barnes missing some time. Emmanuel Quickley has missed some time, but Jakob Poeltl has recouped a ton of trade value this year. Ochai Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, Jamal Shead, and Jonathan Mogul have all stepped up defensively. I think Jacoby Walter has shown some flashes, but is definitely going to be a little bit more of a developmental project than expected. And this team most likely is going to add a top 7 pick in this draft. They didn't get their first round pick last year from the Jakob Poeltl trade. So while they have been bad this year, they've been at least a little bit more competitive in a lot of their games compared to Washington and Brooklyn, and they have a little bit better of a young core as well. Joining Minnesota, Miami, Milwaukee, getting a C grade, the 2025 Golden State Warriors. Man, it's pretty much been the most average year possible for Golden State, and they've been good defensively this year, but they have struggled offensively. It is a shame that DeAnthony Melton went down. They used that money to go out and get Dennis Schroeder, who they could still trade this year, and Schroeder has been a little disappointing since getting traded to the Golden State Warriors. Steph isn't getting any younger, and this team is not competing with its current roster in the Western Conference. They'd be lucky to make it out of the play-in tournament if they didn't make a single move, but what type of move are they going to make? The Warriors are in a very tough spot right now because Pods has lost a little bit of trade value this year. I don't think Kuminga's has changed too much, but this team needs to trade probably Andrew Wiggins if they wanted to make a significant upgrade. But would you trade Andrew Wiggins and multiple rotational pieces for Jimmy Butler? No, that doesn't make you that much better. You're not trading Steph. You're not trading Draymond. I just think this team is an impossible situation to maximize this Curry window, and I'm really scared they're going to make an irrational decision at the deadline. I'm giving Charlotte a C- like Brooklyn and Washington. They are one of the worst teams in the NBA this year. LaMelo Ball missed some time yet again, but he has been electric offensively at times. Now, there are some games where he's taking 30+ shots, and it is tough to watch. But you look at this Hornets team, not a lot of guys can create their own shot. Brandon Miller has missed some time this year, but I still think is a very good young asset in this league. Since Mark Williams has came back from injury, he's looked great. They recently traded away Nick Richards, but I think this team could have had a Detroit Pistons type season, and they could have been at least a fringe play-in tournament team and not one of the worst teams in the NBA yet again. I think it's fine at the end of the day. You weren't going to do much in the Eastern Conference playoffs anyway, and you still have LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller under contract for a long time. Maybe you would have liked guys like Tijon Savant to show a little bit more in his rookie year, or Nick Smith Jr. in year number 2, but this team looks like they're going to try to get some assets at the deadline, maybe take on some bad money, which is not a bad idea whatsoever, and then maybe for them, they could win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes in May. So I think Dallas here in 2025 could be similar to Orlando, maybe not as extreme, but they've had a lot of injuries this year. Luka went down, Kyrie's missed some time, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively have all missed some time this year as well, but it's looking like they do have the depth to withstand some of these injuries, and it looks like this depth is showcasing that they could play well in the playoffs, because Quentin Grimes is looking like a home run pickup. Same with Najee Marshall in the offseason. Jaden Hardy's taken a little bit of a step offensively. PJ Washington has taken a step defensively, Klay Thompson is hitting 38% of his threes, and Luka hasn't played in a little bit, but it looks like he's going to be back before the trade deadline. This team is just a couple games above 500, and they're in the Western Conference. They've dropped to 7th at the moment I'm recording this, but they're still a top 10 team in terms of net rating. They're a great offense. They're going to get Luka back soon, and I think they're going to be just fine for the 2025 playoffs, throwing them with that A- grade. So I'm going to give them a benefit of the doubt just because they won it all last year, but I'm going to give 2025 Boston a B+ with everything going on right now because they looked a little shaky this year. And I think there's a gap right now between them and the Cavs if they want to go back to back and be the first team to win 2 in a row since the 2017 Warriors. The Celtics defense has taken a little bit of a hit. Al Horford is aging. Drew Holiday is aging. Jaylen Brown hasn't been as efficient as you would like. You always have the injury concern with Kristaps Porzingis going on, and I don't think that this Celtics team is the favorite to get out of the Eastern Conference right now, and I think they've had some disappointing losses this year, recently to the Sacramento Kings and the Toronto Raptors. They lost by double digits to the OKC Thunder earlier in January as well, and that's a team they could end up playing in the NBA Finals. And you know what? Sometimes you see this from teams that win it all, a little bit of a finals hangover. Maybe they're not going to try as hard throughout the regular season. They just want to get to the playoffs, and then it's go time. But they're only a game and a half up from the New York Knicks for that 2 seed right now, and that would make a very tough round 2 matchup if the Knicks and Boston ended up playing each other in the Eastern Conference semifinals. I'm sure NBA fans would love that. As a Knicks fan, not as much. Yep, the Utah Jazz are pretty much the Brooklyn Nets or Washington Wizards of the Western Conference, giving them a C-. I think in hindsight, they probably should have traded Larry Markkinen to Golden State. I know Brandon Podziemski has lost some value, but if you could have gotten Kuminga and a ton of draft capital from the Warriors, I think you would do that rather than extending Larry Markkinen, which hurts his trade value a little bit. Tougher to get a deal done. And Markkinen has taken a little bit of a step back. Now, I know it's not as exciting playing for a team that is almost 20 games under 500, that is almost dead last in the Western Conference. But I think for the Jazz, this is where they want to be, and I think that's helping out this grade because overall play this year, they're an F. But this team needs to bottom out, something they haven't done since they traded away Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Like getting Taylor Hendricks at 9, Cody Williams at 10 are not the type of franchise-altering draft picks that you could make. So they need to end up getting number 1 or number 2 or number 3 here in the 2025 draft. They're getting a little bit more out of John Collins this year, which can help out his trade value. Same with Colin Sexton. We'll see if they trade Walker Kessler, even though I don't think they should do that. Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh have shown some flashes, and this team does have enough young talent right now that could be role players at the next level. They just need to find that number 1. I don't think that's going to be Keontae George. Maybe he's going to be a 3 at best in the league, maybe a 2 if everything goes well. But I do think this team is probably going to trade Larry Markkinen in the offseason. They're going to bottom out this year. They're going to hope to get Cooper Flagg, and then they're going to hope to get AJ DeBanza in the 2026 draft. And the last team we're going to talk about, the LA Lakers. I'm going to give them a B- right now. Now, the Lakers are a playoff team, like a non-playing tournament playoff team in the Western Conference. JJ Redick has looked better than Darvin Ham. I know the bar was low, but I don't know if he's looked that much better. They went out, they traded for Dorian Finney-Smith, but this team is still a bottom 10 team in the NBA in terms of net rating. You can't look at me with a straight face and say that the LA Lakers are going to win 2, let alone 1 playoff series at this current moment, and maybe there is another move to make it the deadline with Hashimura, Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent's money, because you're not moving Austin Reeves, who has been great over his last 10 games as a playmaking point guard. LeBron has been good this year, but he's 40. How many years of LeBron do you have left? Anthony Davis has looked good this year. And let's say LeBron James was 28 years old. I'd be fine with this team just kind of continuing to develop what they have right now. But no, LeBron, this could be the last good year of his career, and you are ranked 21st in terms of net rating. I can't really trust that team in the playoffs right now. I do think there's a move to be made. And hey, they're 4 games above 500 in a tough Western Conference. That's why I'm giving them a B- grade so far. But the Lakers don't have as many good wins as you would think. Like they beat Minnesota, Phoenix, Sacramento this year. Those are fine teams to beat, but they've lost to Dallas, OKC, Memphis, and Houston, and those are going to be teams that they are going to have to play in the playoffs, and I don't think I would take them in a round 1 series right now. So that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know what you think I gave your favorite team's letter grade in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are not already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.